Well, welcome everyone. As I said, konnichiwa. Hopefully that video provides you with a little bit of inspiration for what we're here to talk about today. So on one hand, it's about the fourth industrial revolution, as you saw. And the other hand, it's about the circular economy. And really, the question is, how do we make these two things intersect? The fourth industrial revolution is an innovation agenda, it's a transformation agenda, and so should be the circular economy. And really, hopefully, today we can surface some of the ideas, understand better what these technologies can do for us in terms of really accelerating, driving impact for the circular economy. We're going to get you to surface some ideas, so you'll see some sheets of paper on your table, so we'll get you all to do some work. And then we'll hear some inspirational examples from different colleagues as to how they're applying this thinking within their different organizations. So my name is Antonia Gavel. I head the Circular Economy Initiative at the World Economic Forum, and I'm very, very happy to be here to facilitate this discussion today. Be mindful that this is an active one. It will be fast-paced. And really, I think, the challenge for us, as I said, think transformational, think at speed, but also think about collaborations and partnerships. I think this is really important to us. We host a platform called the Platform for Accelerating the Circular Economy, which is about partnerships to drive change, to drive transformation. And so this is really the themes that we're hoping to capture in the conversations today. So I'd like to first welcome up our panelists, which will be the first segment of the session. If you'll just come up all together, we'll sit down, I think, here. So I think we're very lucky to have such an amazing panel. Everything from technology experts to major companies that are driving impact in this space, as well as investors who are trying to understand how can we really scale these types of innovations, what types of business models do we need, what types of financeable technologies do we need as well. So first I'm going to give the floor to Makiko Eda, who is the head of the World Economic Forum's Japan office, to share a few words about Japan, the fourth industrial revolution, and really the potential of this transformation at large.
こんにちは。World Economic Forum. I'm the Chief Representative Officer for Forum Japan. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for letting me participate. Just because I represent Japan, so therefore let me just talk about Japan's context. Japan has a growth strategy called Society 5.0. It is to look at how do we grow not only economically, but in an inclusive manner for many years to come as we face fourth industrial revolution. How do we accelerate our business as well as taking care of our environment? How do we take care of, include old people as well as the young people more actively? On that vision, World Economic Forum's 4IR thinking is closely matched. For that reason, we have opened a Center for Fourth Industrial Revolution outside of the United States. For the first place is Tokyo. So we have opened the Center for Fourth IR in July, and we started working on how to integrate these technologies more actively to our society. As I go around the country and talking about education or healthcare or future of transportation or how the urban society will look like, all the conversation will lead to 4IR because it is such a great technology which enable us to create those future. We have to work to minimize the negative aspect of AI or for those new technology. At the same time, how do we work together to take advantage of the best of the technology? So for that reason, I'm very excited that for many people join us to talk about how do we advance the agenda of circular economy. So thank you.
Thank you, Makiko. So indeed, it emphasizes this is a transformation at large, right? So it's impacting society, it's impacting businesses, and also governments. I think increasingly we see a lot of governments trying to understand the potential for this technology, but also making sure that it's guided in the right direction and playing a critical policy role there. So now, obviously we're here to talk about the circular economy. This is the World Circular Economy Forum. I'll pass the floor to Kate Brandt, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Google. They know a thing or two about technology, to share with us, some of the thinking and the work that's been happening in Google in terms of, again, marrying AI, 4AR technologies with the circular economy specifically.
Wonderful. Good afternoon. Konnichiwa. Thank you so much to Antonia and the forum for including me in this panel. It's great to be here. So at Google, we have set a goal that we strive to incorporate circular economy principles into our infrastructure, our operations, our products, and our culture. And we also aim to utilize technology, the 4IR technologies that we're talking about today, to unlock and accelerate the circular economy. And so when we think about some of the new tools that we have at our disposal that are part of this vision for the fourth industrial revolution, cloud computing, machine learning, geomapping, I think they have tremendous potential to really get at some of the core principles of the circular economy. For example, when we think about designing out waste and pollution, when we think about the role of regenerating natural systems in a circular economy, we're starting to see some really concrete examples of the role of technology. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about how we're thinking about this and where we see a tremendous amount of opportunity. So first, in the space of air pollution, as you may know, 90% of people globally are breathing polluted air today. This is a tremendous challenge, and I think this is a place where we have huge opportunity within the circular economy. And so at Google, several years ago, going back to 2014, we launched a partnership with the Environmental Defense Fund, which is called Project AirView. And the vision of Project AirView is that at Google, we have our Street View cars. These are the cars that you may have seen driving around even in your neck of the woods that make Google Maps possible. Well, we thought, what if we started to attach air quality sensors to these Street View cars so we could get a much clearer picture at a street-by-street scale of air quality to give policymakers and community groups really actionable information about where were those hotspots, how could they improve air quality for their communities and from a public health perspective. And so we started first in several cities around the US just measuring methane, which of course is a very strong greenhouse gas and has safety implications. And then we partnered up with a great technology firm out in California, where I'm from, called Aclima. And they provide an air quality sensor that can measure all different kinds of particulate matter, NOx, SOx, CO2. And so we've now been adding those to our Street View cars, and we've been able to start releasing maps of air quality at a very granular level for communities. And we're now going to expand that to 50 new places around the world, and we're working to identify those places now. Another area, as I mentioned, that I think holds tremendous promise is on this topic of regenerating natural systems. That is another core principle of the circular economy. And to do that, we need to be able to measure what we like to think of as the Earth's vital signs. How are our forests doing? How are the health of our fisheries? What about how we're doing on global surface water? And so again, we've been really interested in the role of cloud in terms of being able to crunch huge amounts of data, geomapping, our ability to visualize this information at a global scale or at a more granular community scale. And then in some instances also, how can machine learning play a role? Essentially, when I say machine learning, I mean the ability of an algorithm to digest a bunch of data, to see patterns, and to derive useful insights from those patterns. So one of the best examples of this is a tool called Global Fishing Watch. This is a partnership between Google and Oceana and SkyTruth. And if you Google Global Fishing Watch right now, what you'll find is a global heat map of fishing activity. And the reason this is possible is a combination of those three technologies that I mentioned. And through a machine learning algorithm, we were able to ingest a bunch of public data about where vessels are on the high seas, identify which were a fishing vessel, what did they look like when they were fishing. And so now this tool has been used by nations around the world to create 5 new marine protected areas. And so this means at any given time, we have a much better insight into how our fisheries are doing and our ability to protect them and steward them. We've done very similar work with other partners to track global forest cover, a tool called Global Forest Watch. Basically the same thing, 100% of forest cover can be tracked in nearly real time. Also global surface water. We've had a partnership with the European Commission. You can now see a map of all global surface water. So these are just a few examples that I wanted to highlight because I think they really show how technology can unlock new insights for us that are going to be critical as we look to accelerate the circular economy.
Thanks, Kate. So again, I mean, it's you know, we think about the fourth industrial revolution, and often we come up with a kind of list of these are technologies that kind of apply when we think about the fourth industrial revolution. But the point that you make is also that it's the combination of technologies with the right applications, right? So how do we find useful applications? We have loads of data now at our disposal, combining the right set of technologies to then actually solve a problem, right? And partnering with the right people to make that happen. So no, I think it's really inspirational work that you guys are doing. So then, you know, for us as a community, circular economy, traceability, supply chains, materials, you know, how can we start thinking about these types of applications, I think is our challenge. So let me now turn the floor to Harold. Harold Tepper from Royal Philips, Program Lead for Circular Economy, and also Philips is the co-chair, Frans van Houten, you're CEO of the Platform for Accelerating the Circular Economy as well, to maybe then give us sort of a business application perspective. You know, how are you thinking about this within a company, and also how do you see this scaling and the necessary elements to scale?
Yes, Antonia, thank you very much. Thank you for having me here, and welcome to you all. It's great to be able to address you here. So as Philips, we are on this journey to become a leader, a focused leader in sustainable health technology. So we have this mission to increase the health and sustainability by meaningful innovation. And as part of that, we have the ambition to improve the lives of 3 billion people annually around the globe by 2025. And obviously we want to do that in full awareness of the limitations that we have with this one planet that we live on. And we're by far not there yet, as you probably know. As part of that, we have set 3 very ambitious goals on our circular economy program. So first of all, by 2020, we want to be able to attribute 15% of our revenue to circular economy solutions and value propositions. Right now, we have advanced to 11%, so there's still a way to go. This year, at the beginning of this year, at Davos, our CEO, Frans van Houten, added 2 extra ambitions to that to make this more smart and to really take this up a notch internally, which is that we pledged there to by 2020, take back all of our large-scale medical equipment from our customers. So really take it back, refurbish it, and really take responsibility for responsible disposal of this material. We start with our large-scale medical equipment, but obviously it shouldn't end there. So by 2025, we want to be really completely circular across our professional portfolio. And we did so in the full realization that we cannot do this alone. So one of the things we did when we announced this pledge in Davos in 2018 is we didn't stand on the stage alone. We actually launched a coalition, which we call the Capital Equipment Coalition, of now 10 capital equipment manufacturers, ranging as wide from printers and servers to medical equipment to even ships and agricultural equipment, that all have a similar ambition. That all have done this pledge to take back all their equipment from their clients and make sure that thus they contribute to a circular economy. And why do we do this? We convene in physical workshops actually together with them to think about the barriers and the opportunities that we meet. And even though these are very diverse companies, we actually see very similar barriers and opportunities. And this year we focus on 2 topics. One is around integral value assessment of these take-back offers. So what can you actually offer to your customer? How can you think integrally on the business value of these return transactions? And the other topic is really around how do we engage our employees Because even as a front runner, even as a company that has been working on circular economy since 2012, we still have a way to go to take with us all our employees and to really ingrain circular economy way more into the DNA of our company. So, I think while doing so with this coalition and also internally, we realized that IT and the next level of IT solutions that we talk about today are actually a prime enabler to help us advance on the circular economy. And I think we're actually only seeing the tip of the iceberg yet. So by far, I will not pledge that we know the answers. It was already said, you said it in the beginning, we don't know the future. But it's incredibly exciting to be part of this journey. And I will just mention a couple of things that have surfaced when we were thinking about that. So first of all, with the pilots that we have now gone on in different markets around the world on taking back our equipment, we've realized that we have to become much more smarter about our own asset management. So really gaining full transparency of where our installed base is, which is more or less easy for large-scale equipment because we have long-term partnerships with hospitals, for instance, but it becomes more and more difficult with smaller equipment. So there's an amazing promise of things like tracking and tracing technologies, blockchain applications to really become very smart about where all your equipment is, which is actually the first start if you want to take responsibility for it. But it's also internally coupling all kinds of systems and data to make this happen. For instance, the data about the installed base and what machines become end of life when, really with the marketing solutions, so that the marketeers know when they can proactively go out to their customers and really come up with a good trade-in offer. And also there you can see it's only the start because we can become more and more smart also about end-of-life management of our equipment, like people doing in large infrastructure projects to measure the state of your machines. So on top of optimizing your own asset management, we are also offering more and more solutions to optimize the assets at customers. Yeah, sure. And so we have a lot of IT solutions to help them optimize their utilization, to make sure that they can use less equipment, but also, for instance, being able to smartly upgrade and downgrade machines that we increasingly not sell them anymore, but offer to them in lease constructs, etc. Moving more and more to remote service also. So there where we deliver, for instance, in the past delivered a lot of hardware service with our software applications. We move more and more to virtualization and to cloud services. But also we make our software up to date so that we can do a remote servicing. And last but not least, and I'll end there, really thinking more and more in the future about IT solutions that actually are able to replace hardware. So for instance, one of the examples we have on the market now is these diagnostic machines that previously, for instance, a mobile ultrasound machine that previously we always sold together with a bedside monitor, with a display apparatus, and now we have it with apps that connect to the mobile devices of hospital workers, which is great in advanced hospitals, but even greater, I think, in emerging countries where you have so much challenges with expensive resources. So let's stop there.
Thank you,
Lots to
Harold.
come.
I mean, clearly a huge agenda,
Yes.
lots of opportunity. I mean, I think just quickly, it sort of starts from a commitment and a vision on one end, right, in terms of applying circular economy business models. You talked about a commitment sort of for capital equipment, but also moving towards more of a service-based model on the back end. But then it goes even further, right? How do you actually dematerialize the services on top of it? So you can see that how 4IR actually is then playing a role throughout that entire transformation agenda, which is ultimately, I think, where we want to come to. So thanks, Harold. We'll certainly have more time to dig into that. So next, I think, once we start to really look at particular cases of application, or if we talk about the 4IR, who's heard of the term blockchain? A lot of people. Who understands exactly what the blockchain is? Less people, including myself. So luckily, we have Leanne Kemp here, who knows everything about blockchain, the CEO and founder of Everledger, who is sort of very much an early mover in this space, to talk to us about some of the work that they're doing in terms of looking at traceability of some of the supply chains, but also I guess it's also a combination of technologies that are enabling that as well.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I think I've in the industry long enough now to be called the grandmother of industry, which I'm not sure if I'm too excited about that term, to be honest, but in any event. So thank you for having me. It's a delight to be here. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Everledger. We began in the heart of London in April 2015, so we're about 3.5 years old, which is embarrassing considering the company that I'm keeping on the stage. I'm also the Premier Appoint as the Chief Entrepreneur for the state of Queensland in Australia, so I can see the applications of circular economy not only from a perspective of government and bring insight into policy making, but of course as a software engineer upon which I've built my career over the last 20 odd years. I find it comfortable sitting behind a keyboard rather than having a microphone shoved in front of my face. But certainly blockchain can demystify, it's really next generation internet technologies that will enable us to move from what we once knew was the World Wide Web to the World Wide Ledger. It's really a data construct that enables people to be able to transfer value, and that value can be in a digital form where it comes to currency, or it could be in the application that Everledger implemented, which was in the traceability of diamonds, from the source of the mine right the way through to the retail outlet. I like to sometimes joke about that, from the mine to the market or the mine to the mistress. It really depends upon how far you want to take traceability. But in any event, blockchain, as we know it today, has faced a significant amount of hype, a little bit of misunderstanding, and it really is approaching an adolescence like a terrible two, like a child. As it's starting to find its own feet in the marketplace, we are now seeing production scale implementations that sit not only in the cryptocurrency space, but also in supply chain and traceability. And as we mentioned before, it is a value construct. It enables the sharing of information securely and privately, but beyond the technical componentry, it really is the first time that we're able to combine technologies together to create entirely new value mechanisms, an entirely new way to transfer value. So what we will see in the next 2 to 5 years are an existing set of industry leads that will begin to share data in a secured and private way. We will see new scrappy startups come into the space and innovate and create applications of value. And likely we will start to see it being used in a digital sense for money and transfer. But more importantly, we should really think about what does this mean from an economic sustainability perspective, and beyond just using the technology for a cool way to transfer value, how can we create new value and meaning into supply chain? Parts of that work have already been begun in the diamond and jewellery industry, where we began to understand in early constructs, could a diamond mine be carbon neutral? And that research was begun by De Beers about 3 or 4 years ago, and scientifically we're pretty close to proving that the tailings out of a diamond mine are able to absorb and will become carbon neutral. So can we extend across a blockchain network the data capturing to also prove that manufacturing practices are also being kept globally at a sustainable level? And this type of technology cannot exist solely. Everledger exists by using machine vision, smart contracts, AI, blockchain. It's a symphony of technologies that are combined together to be able to ensure a transparent supply chain. And I think this is where we'll start to see some of the applications that far surpass the policies and procedures and governance that governments are only thinking about just today.
Thanks, Leanne. So I think it's a super exciting space, and as you say, it's being applied in a few areas. And I think, again, the challenge for us here today is what are the other areas, knowing the potential applications for a thing like blockchain in combination with other technologies, do we think it can be used perhaps in the circular economy agenda specifically to look at some of the opportunities? So I think that kind of gives you a sense perhaps of where the landscape is, where the examples of innovations that are being used, where the examples of kind of applications within companies, but also where the kind of forward-looking approaches to how we use some of these technologies. And I think like any innovation transformation agenda, the question is how do you scale it? And how do you really take it from kind of the early phases of development and excitement and turn it into mainstream, right? And this is often where the financiers come into play and really kind of help us understand, what does it take to get large-scale capital investment into some of these initiatives and ideas, but also how do you scale it up within companies? How do you move it from a specific example to really a corporate portfolio solution as well? So happy to have Leon Wijnands from ING, the head of global sustainability. Again, from a finance and banking perspective, what are you looking for in terms of really scaling some of these, arguably in some cases, earlier stage solutions to make it happen?
Yeah, thank you, Antonia. Konnichiwa. You're not very lucky because now you get the boring banker to tell you something after all these very concrete examples. And banking, by the way, I think we are the oldest circular profession in the world because at the end of the contract, we want our money back. So that's, I think, a take-back program which already consists for years. And if we don't get the money back, then we want the collateral back. And that is where this fourth industrial revolution can kick in. Because circular economy often means new business models, new technologies, and that also, at least for bankers, means something they don't know about, and then they think, ooh, risk. And how can fourth IR help in de-risking, in mitigating those risks? And I think that's possible by using technology, by creating market standards, but also by using innovation. Let me go to the first point, technology. We already heard some examples. I think what Everledger did in the diamond industry is a good example on how transparency can really help you in tracking and tracing what's going on in the value chain. So how do you see if the diamonds you are financing, if they are real diamonds or if they are false diamonds? If these are diamonds which are sourced in a sustainable way or if it are blood diamonds. So I think blockchain technology can really help us there. It can also help us in creating transparency on a single source of truth. And the other element is that it can also make transactions cheaper. So if you move to a product as a service model, you have your washing machines at all your customers, and you need to do micro payments and micro invoicing, then this whole new technology can also make those transactions much cheaper than if you use the old existing technology. So that's the technology part. The second is market standards. I think the financial sector also needs standards for that. That's why we worked with the Financial Circular Economy Work Group of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to come with financial circular economy guidelines to create a taxonomy which can be used by every bank. But last but not least is, of course, innovation. How can we use this technology to innovate? And we already use blockchain technology. For instance, in trade finance, how can we follow the trade flows and finance them? That's an example where we use fourth industrial revolution technology. And the other where we use it, and Philips was the first customer where we did the deal with, is that we do financing of sustainable initiatives, because we think that companies who are future-proof, they will also future-proof the bank. And the best business for us is sustainable business. And that's why we have this product by which if companies move to a more sustainable way of producing, then the interest rate that they pay is lower. So we created a loan for Philips in which when their sustainability performance goes up, the interest rate that they pay goes down. And of course the other way around, which is a real incentive to do so. So that's a little bit what I would like to add. So how can we contribute? It's using the technology in a good way, is setting market standards, and also innovation. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So, I mean, I think, having heard from each of the panelists, there's a lot of ideas, I think, a lot of questions as well that are raised in terms of what we need to do to scale the solution. Before we jump into the breakout discussions, because as you see, you have all these activities on your tables, I just want to kind of maybe dig a little bit deeper to help actually give you some inspiration and ideas. On one hand, the one thing that we didn't actually have time to talk about much is also the role of government and the role of policy in terms of scaling the solutions. I think on one hand, we need corporate leadership really to drive transformation. We also need government leadership to kind of set some of the standards and set some of the, I would say high, not benchmarks, but actually high level of ambitions as to where we need to go. And also, of course, financing to scale. So just one quick question I want to throw out there is the role of governments in helping all of these activities really gain more traction. So question one. And then the second question that I'll throw, and I'll kind of like leave it open as to who wants to jump in, is as everybody kind of gets into their exercises, kind of one maybe perhaps forward-looking idea or example as to where you could see, maybe not today, but in the future, 4IR being applied for circular economy specifically. So maybe we'll start with policy. Any initial responses to that?
Yeah, sure, I can take that. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I would say that we need to do this together. And it was mentioned already by Katijnen this morning, who said, I need feedback from the private sector to what the policy barriers are, and please help me. Because we cannot do that in isolation. And that's actually why we are also co-chairing this platform for accelerating the circular economy that was initiated under the WEF, where you actually see that becoming reality in practice, because it's co-chaired by the private sector and by governments and by NGOs. I think we're really on the brink of a new way of working together between the private sector and governments, and we all have to adjust to that. So if I look in the Netherlands, for instance, we have a great tradition of bringing both parties together. And at the same time, it is often coming together after a lot of deliberation into our own silos. And that needs to change, I think. So really bring together front runners from the private parties and front runners in the government, and step out of your own role also and think societal impact first. Try to find the solutions in a pre-competitive nature, and then go back and make it happen.
Great, thanks, Harold. Maybe then we'll just jump quickly to keep things fast-paced and going. Any kind of inspirational ideas before we jump into the breakout conversations?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up again. I talked a little bit about machine learning and AI a moment ago, and again, to reference Minister Katijnen again, I thought it was really interesting that he commented that AI and circular economy were two of the greatest trends that we were going to see unfolding, and I actually think that they are quite related. And the way that I often like to think about it is we're moving from this age of information where we've generated so much information, and I think we need to move towards an age of knowledge where we're actually able to ingest that information and utilize it to drive change and to drive positive impacts. And so when we think about the potentials of AI and machine learning as they apply to the circular economy, the thing that gets me really excited is, as we know, the circular economy isn't just about sort of eking out efficiency, it's about really changing systems. And that's exactly what we're starting to see as a potential. And we have this one interesting example at Google where we operate data centers around the world. This is what makes Gmail and YouTube and all the Google services that we all use possible. And those data centers have very complex industrial systems inside of them. And we've been thinking about efficiency in those systems for over a decade. But we thought, what if, since we're an AI-first company, what if we thought about applying machine learning to that system? Could that give us insights? And we found something pretty incredible. We were able to see a 30% increase in efficiency in that cooling system that we'd been working on optimizing for years and years by applying a machine learning algorithm. And so not only is that great for us, we're going to continue to experiment with this and deploy it at our data centers, but it really makes you think about what if you were to apply some of the same thinking to a utility grid? How could we massively optimize a utility grid, or to manufacturing infrastructure and to other large systems? So I just give that as a provocation that I think not only are AI and circular economy two parallel trends, I think they're also actually very interrelated.
Great, thanks. Okay, so I think first of all, thank you to our amazing panel. Maybe you can give a hand to our group here for laying out, I think, a really great conversation. So I think our panel did a lot of work to set things up, and now it's your turn. to get to work. I think, we've got a lot of ideas, a lot of inspirations around what we can do. And now really what we'd like to do is engage all of you in a bit of a brainstorming exercise. And then all of our panelists will kind of join in these conversations as well and hopefully lend some of their expertise to help kind of inspire the ideas. So basically, you're going to be working quite hard over a short amount of time. What you'll see on your table is 3 things. One is a question, so you can share that around, which you're tasked to answer. The second is a worksheet, where you're tasked to place your answers. And the third are some Post-it notes, really, to write down your ideas. And basically, you're sitting in different groups. If you could start by spending a minute or two just saying hello to each other, picking somebody who will be sort of the table lead. We'll let you self-select. Then we're going to have you brainstorm, as we said, the solutions to the question that you have on your table. Write your ideas on Post-it notes, stick them on your sheet. And then as a group, you'll have a short conversation really to kind of maybe focus in on a few that you agree are really interesting and circle them and you can have a conversation. What we'd love you to do at the end of this session, of the end of the brainstorming exercise, maybe not necessarily in this room, but even after, is what we'd love to do is to capture your idea, your one idea. So what we'd love is if you have a phone, to pick somebody from your table who can do a short pitch, and video that, basically no more than a minute, and send it to us, and we'll give you a number. And again, this is all part of an idea of collecting broad intelligence on how we can really drive this idea forward. And I think a lot of you have amazing ideas in this context. So that's the task that you have in front of you. And we'll let you get to work. And we'll remind you when you should be moving on to the next task. And hopefully, you'll come up with some good ideas. And I think for all of those who are sitting around, to the extent possible, of course, welcome you to try and join into some of the conversations, if you can pull a chair around the tables, or just listen in as well, just to try to engage as many people as possible. So again, thanks to the panel, and look forward to the next segment of discussion from you. Okay, we see the discussions are going really well, which is great. Just to flag, you have a few more minutes to converge some of your ideas before we move on to the next segment of the session. So keep talking, specific ideas, pick your person who will do your video.
she want to have that video?
It's Suzanne. Suzanne, I'll have to find Suzanne. It's hers. Suzanne, my colleague who was there earlier. I'll find her if she can share it. Okay. I just have to get this next. I have to get them going. We'll connect though. Okay, I hate to interrupt a good discussion, but unfortunately we have to continue the session. So I'm going to draw all of your attention back. Good. All right, can we just close the door? Thank you. Good, well, I'm so pleased to hear that everybody was so engaged in the conversations. I see lots of post-it notes, which is excellent. I think just briefly, a couple things that we heard. We were spying into the tables a little bit. And I think two interesting things is one is that even though some of you had the same questions, the divergent ideas that came out of those responses demonstrate, I think, really on one hand, the power of innovation. I'm stealing a line from Sarah. Everything from looking at product traceability, using different technology applications to really improve our understanding of the way that products flow through supply chains, transforming those supply chains completely. It's not just about doing what we do better, but really transforming the way that we do. All the way through to kind of sorting of downstream waste, for example. There's huge innovations in this space as well, be it robotics. How do we really kind of scale up the approaches to waste management, collection, reverse logistics, using really smart, intelligent systems to deploy fleets, for example, to collect in a way that is much, much more efficient and really addresses some of the economic barriers that we see today. So a huge range of ideas, at least from the tables that I heard. Now, Makika was going to share a few reflections also from some of the conversations here, maybe more from a regional perspective.
I kind of picked into it in the Japanese language. There's fascinating ideas, and this group worked on how to trace how the manufacturers can trace the products for their lifetime. And they talked about how we shift from the ownership ideas to a sharing of the products that could extend the life of the product as well as give more intelligence for the manufacturers for the usage of the products. So that is a good cycle, but they also talk about how important it is to honor the privacy of individuals. And on this group, we talked about how do we bring more efficiency in the collection of the waste, as well as the separation of the different materials using AI and IoT.
So as we said at the beginning, we're hoping that this is just the beginning of the brainstorming. After this session, and please bear with us and actually do this, if you could, whoever you've picked as your discussion lead, maybe you're a pair, you can video in about a minute some of the key ideas that you came up with and send them to this number by SMS, whichever means works for you to get it to that number. Text message should work. It'll be really helpful because we're gathering all of this insight into some of the thinking and research that is actually being done in this area. So please kind of go out, you can find a quiet corner after the session, do a short video and send it back to us, and we will really use this. Again, it's very much about opening ideas and thinking. Leadership is the second one. So leadership from governments, really to set our baseline high. I think there really does need to be leadership from governments to push society towards this agenda on one hand, but also business leadership. As we heard from Apple, from Google, Philips and others, is really leadership from the top of these organizations to be committed to this transition is so important. The third is collaboration. I learned a new word yesterday, Japanese word choa, which refers to kind of harmonious collaboration and working together. And I think in this case, it's really about harmonious collaboration and working together towards a goal. It's about working towards the circular economy, and I think as the presentation from Apple showed, it's not necessarily easy, and that's where the fourth word that I leave with is action. So if we really want to make this translate from ideas to leadership, to commitment, we need to really then work hard to drive action on the ground to make this happen. And again, working together is the only way that we'll achieve that objective, I think, at least. So again, this is the beginning of the thinking in this space. We have ongoing work within the World Economic Forum with all of our partners through our platform for accelerating the circular economy, and I thank many of the partners who are in the room today for working with us to make these conversations possible. We of course welcome all of you to collaborate. We have a booth downstairs if you'd like to learn more as well. But again, thank all of our speakers for the inspirational ideas and examples. I'd like to thank all of you for your active participation and engagement. And finally, I'd like to thank the team. In particular, as I mentioned, this is done in collaboration with Accenture Strategy, Suzanne and James and others from the World Economic Forum who have really made this session, I think, as hopefully as engaging and interesting as possible for you all. Thank you very much.